For over 4 decades, the Eastern Caribbean dollar has been pegged to the US dollar, making it one of the most stable currencies in the world. But what are the advantages and disadvantages of having this peg? Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, Timothy Antoine, at the recent launch of the celebration of the bank's 40th anniversary, lauded the stable exchange rate as one of the accomplishments of the ECCB over the 40 years of its existence.
I confirm that our EC dollar remains strong with a current backing of 91% in foreign reserves. Our celebration of this milestone is especially gratifying because the past 40 years have been anything but smooth sailing. We have endured external economic shocks, hurricanes, volcanoes, recessions, and most recently a pandemic. But here we are, still standing.
But while a stable exchange rate offers many advantages, what are the challenges that could arise from having the EC dollar pegged to the US dollar? In a recent media engagement with Caribbean journalists in Barbados, Acting Director of the Western Hemisphere Department of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Nigel Chalk, was asked about this issue.
With the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, which is the smaller grouping inside of CARICOM there, our dollar is pegged to the US, as you know. And you talked about flexible exchange rates. How much of a disadvantage does it put us at when we need that flexibility, but we're pegged?
I think we view the exchange rate regime as a tool, right? So for some countries, the flexible exchange rate works. So some countries, a flexible exchange rate works very well. And I think the transition in Jamaica to a more flexible system has worked well in allowing it to absorb shocks. For other countries, if they're small, they're very dependent on tourism. There's a lot of foreign resources coming in. I think a pegged exchange rate is fine. I think the difference, though, is that you have to manage your system in a pegged exchange rate much more differently than in the floating exchange rate. And in that case, you need to have a consistency of policies that will, they're consistent with your exchange rate regime. So in that, for example, you can't have a very, very loose fiscal policy because you will end up running out of resources to finance that fiscal policy. So I think it's what we look for in terms of the regime is much more about the consistency across different policies rather than the regime itself. We've seen pegged exchange rates work very well in lots of different cases. I used to work in Hong Kong in the past, pegged exchange rate there for 30 years. It's worked great. We've seen floating exchange rate systems that work very well. And I think the key is that you need to have the institutional framework that ensures a consistency of policies between what you've chosen as your exchange rate anchor or as your exchange rate regime and what you're doing in things like fiscal and monetary policy and the other policies in your economy. So I don't think it disadvantages the ECCU. They just need a certain type of discipline. They need flexible prices and wages. They need a disciplined fiscal policy in order to support that exchange rate regime.
The EC dollar has been pegged to the US dollar since July 1976 at a rate of $2.70 EC to $1 US. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.